Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video, and this is one I'm excited to do, and I hope you enjoy watching it. It's one I've been thinking about ever since I actually made the McHenry & Williams video. This video is going to be a comparison between the Benchmade 710 McHenry & Williams and the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Now, this is the Digicam and Black DLC Para 2. We'll kind of assume that we're comparing like to like, so we just have black G10 and a satin finished blade on both of these, okay? So we're going to just use our imaginations and pretend that that's the case as we go through this video. I won't comment on, color and DLC and all that kind of stuff. So the reason I wanted to compare these two knives is because I feel like both of them aim at a similar segment of the market. Both of these knives are really trying to be fantastic everyday carry knives, and I actually think both of them succeed at being fantastic everyday carry knives. If you're going to try to buy one of these and you're trying to pick between the two, I hope this video helps you, but it may not, because I love both of them. I do feel like one edges out the other just a little bit, but I'm not going to tell you that until the end. Okay, so both of these are around $150. This one's $160, this one's $140. So price difference is noticeable, $20, $25, but probably not the biggest deciding factor. However, there are some other things going on that we want to compare. And let's start the way I always do with my knife videos, by comparing size and weight. So this knife is 9 inches overall. This knife is 8¼ inches overall. This knife weighs in at 3.75 ounces. Excellent to get a knife this size under 4 ounces. This knife does not do that. It weighs in at 4.5 ounces. So you've got almost an inch more size and almost 1 ounce more weight in this knife over this knife. That said, if you close the two knives and hold them up side by side, they are within 1/8 of an inch of each other. The McHenry & Williams is just 1/8 of an inch bigger than the Para 2. Okay, so basically you've got a full 5 inches here, basically you've got just under 5 inches here. That's what we're dealing with in terms of how big they are in your pocket. The other thing I will say is that the Para 2 takes up a little more real estate. So you kind of have this weird trade-off, right? Where the Para 2 weighs a little less, which is nice, but the Benchmade takes up a little less space, which is nice. So which one do you pick? Probably whichever one you'd prefer. If you always carry a bunch of stuff in your knife pocket, maybe this one wins out. If you're worried about weight and that 1 ounce is going to kill you, maybe this one wins out. Hard to really give that a definitive call. All I can say is the Spyderco weighs less, the McHenry & Williams weighs more but takes up less space. There you go. The next thing that I want to compare is the blades on these two knives. This is what I always do in my videos. We talk about blade next. So let's start with the Para 2. The blade on this guy is S30V. It's a clip point, sort of a modified clip point. You do have these great finger choils or a thumb ramp and a great half choil at the front. Nice big belly on this. Very, very sharp. Extremely functional blade. By the way, in terms of length, you got 3.5 inches overall, and you've got about 3¼ inches of actual cutting length. So 3.5 inches, 3¼ inches of cutting power. All right. Compared to the McHenry & Williams, here you have a 4-inch blade in D2 steel. It's also flat ground. By the way, I should have mentioned this is a full flat grind. This is a partial flat grind. It has a full 4 inches of cutting length. In fact, just a little bit more than 4 inches of cutting length. It does have this nice swedge on the top, and this is sort of a modified drop point. So that's how the two blades compare to one another. One thing I will say about this is I've heard both of these steels criticized a little bit. Now, I will say it's minor. Most people love D2 and S30V both. However, there have been suggestions that they may be hard to sharpen. I'm going to say that that has really not been my experience. Now, maybe if you're a first-time knife user or you're just new to sharpening, you may have a little bit of a hard time at first, but I think you'll probably pick it up pretty quickly. I can get both of these knives to a razor sharp edge. These are two of the sharpest knives I own. They take an edge, they hold an edge like you wouldn't believe. And so I don't feel like that's worth complaining about at all. There's a fly, which is what I was looking at a second ago. So I don't feel like there's any complaints about how these are to sharpen. However, I will say this. If you're going to buy one of these knives brand new, this one is going to come with a nicer edge and a sharper edge than this one. This one came sharp, but the edge looked really rough. And so this is both of these have my edge on them. This one, it was more important to put that edge on right away. This one I used with the factory edge for a couple weeks before I took it upon myself to sharpen it the way I felt like it needed to be sharpened. So very comparable. Now, here's the other thing that's crazy. These two blades look very, very different, right? But their performance, the way these two blades feel when you're cutting something is so similar, it's unbelievable. Okay, it's really, really strange. And I think it's because both are full flat grind, and so for most applications, the thing that really matters is that first, quarter inch to half an inch of blade, and it's the same or very similar. Now, there is a finer point on the Para 2. That can be good and that can be bad. It's good in the sense that you have a lot of penetrating power here. You can do a lot of fine work. It's bad in the sense that there's a little fragility. That is, it may break off on you a little easier than the McHenry & Williams. Now, the McHenry & Williams is still a pretty fine point, and I wouldn't recommend doing anything that you think could break the tip off either one of these because you likely will break the tip off. So just don't do that. Carry a pry tool. I've said this in a lot of videos, but this thing is like $3 something on Amazon. And you can go into any sports check and pick one up as well. It's well worth it if you're carrying a nicer knife that you really don't want to break. Or even if you're carrying a crappy knife, but you still don't want to break the tip off of it. Just don't pry with your knives. Now, let's go down to lockup and deployment. There's the Para 2. Notice this is left-handed. There's the McHenry & Williams. Both of these knives deploy extremely fast. These are probably the fastest two deploying knives that I have. The McHenry & Williams, here, we'll give you one just thumb only, no flick. Still comes out nicely. Spyderco, of course. You can do the old spider flick, and it works really well. Totally outstanding deployment on both of these. It's just very different. So this one's going to deploy with a spider hole. This one's going to deploy with a thumb stud. You can do it slowly with both, quickly with both. Both of them will close if you actuate the lock. So there's a lot of similarity. I'm going to say operationally, in terms of fun factor and just overall enjoyment, I think I like the compression lock just a little bit better. In terms of strength, the Axis lock probably comes ahead just a little bit, but they're very, very comparable. And the way Spyderco does this compression lock, a lot of force is actually transferred kind of through the lock to the stop pin, and so there's not a great chance of failure on either one of these parts. And by the way, neither one of them is a fixed blade, so eventually all locks, all pivots will fail. It's not a matter of if but when. In terms of if you're really using them hard, or if you start hanging weight off these, it's not like one of them is going to hold weight forever. They're both going to fail. There just might be a slightly different point at which that happens, but it's going to be similar. And under normal use, both of these are fantastic locks. Just a matter of which one you prefer. So I really like the ergonomics of the compression lock. I really like the speed on both of these knives. So there's deployment. It's similar again, but different. Axis lock, compression lock, both great locks for their respective companies. The Axis lock is, of course, the go-to lock for Benchmade. Spyderco uses a bunch of different locks. They're a little more versatile along those lines. But they're both fun to flip. They're both extremely doable. They're not going to make your fingers sore if you're one of those guys like me who sits there and flips your knife over and over again. Both are tons of fun. Both are very functional. Both are very fast. really a matter of personal preference on that one. And I really don't have a preference between these two. Let's see, we've covered the lock, we've covered the deployment, we've covered the blades. Let's get into the handle, because there are some significant differences in the handles of these two knives. Now, that said, both of these are G10 handles with stainless steel liners. Now, the Para 2 has recessed liners. These are not recessed liners. Both of these are milled out to save some weight, and both of them are G10. Both of them have jimping. However, here's where the Para 2 excels. The Para 2 is much, much grippier. If you could somehow, put both of these blades in a vise, and I was going to try to pull with all my might, I would be able to pull a lot harder on the Paramilitary 2. It's very, very good grip. This G10 is excellent for grippiness. The jimping is fantastic. This G10 is actually quite slick. It could really have been a different pattern, and I kind of wish they'd come out and feature a different G10 on a McHenry & Williams. Also, the jimping, because it's lower than the G10 scales, is almost non-functioning. So I'm going to squeeze really hard, and notice I can still slide my thumb super easily. If I do the same thing here and try to move my thumb, it doesn't move at all. It's locked in. So grippiness definitely goes to the Para 2. Ergonomics is a tie. They're both comfortable to use. I've used them both under all kinds of circumstances and had no problems with either one of them. No hot spots, no discomfort, no sharp edges, nothing like that. In terms of grippiness, the Para 2 gets it. In terms of comfort, it's pretty well the same. Finally is the pocket clip. Now, I've changed the pocket clip out on this one, but I think anyone who's even a little bit familiar with knives has seen, the 3-screw typical Spyderco clip. This is a Casey Lynch clip. It's totally awesome. And the Spyderco clip versus the Benchmade clip, they're pretty comparable. Both go in and out of pocket really well. Both retain really well. Now, the difference between these two knives is this is 4-way repositionable. This is 2-way repositionable. So the McHenry & Williams can go tip up right side, tip up left side. The Para 2 can go tip up, tip down, left side, right side. All four options are there for you, depending on your preference. So, what is my overall take on these two knives? I've got to say, first of all, I really, really love both of them. And if you said you have to pick one and throw one in the garbage, gee, that would be a really, really hard thing for me to do. I do not know which one I would prefer to lose if I had to lose one. Preferably, I would just get to keep both. Now, if I was in your shoes and I was going to have to pick one to buy an EDC, I've got to say that just by a hair, it goes to the McHenry & Williams. And the reason for that is the blade size. In this knife, the 1 ounce difference doesn't matter so much to me, but you have 4 inches of steel there in a very small package. It's easy to carry, it's very slim, and you get all of that. Para 2 takes up as much space or more in your pocket, but you're only getting a 3.5 inch blade, and really that's only 3.25 inch when you consider how much cutting edge you have. Now, the opposite is probably true for you. Probably if you're like a lot of people, especially a lot of YouTubers, you prefer a slightly smaller blade. That 3.5 inch size sort of nails it for most people, and that's why so many folding knives are in that blade size. And so, I totally get it if that's your preference. I wish, and I will say this, if the Paramilitary 2 had 1/4 inch more blade, and I think it could be doable, I would have given this discussion to the Para 2 and said, yep, it's the better knife. They're very, very comparable. Quality, fit and finish, materials, all that stuff, they really stack up well against each other. Blade size is the only place where the edge goes to the Benchmade as far as I'm concerned. You may say, actually, I think that blade is too long. I don't like the shape of it. I don't like the swedge on top. I don't like the satin finish, whatever. But whichever one you prefer, I'm going to say both of these are fantastic knives. If you're really fortunate, you could own both of them and you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of either one. that's my take on, or that's my comparison of the Benchmade McHenry & Williams and the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you did or not, what I could do better, what I could leave out. Like and comment. We'll talk to you soon.